get started.
Jennifer, I saw you come in. Are you not as a host?
Yeah, I private messaged you how to how to make me co-host. You have to do it in the participant list.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay.
There,
You were
I got you.
distracted.
Yes. Okay, you should be now. Do you see it? Yeah, you're there now.
I can keep letting people in if you guys want to get started.
How come I can't get on?
You're on.
I am?
Ramona,
Yeah.
your
My
picture
picture-
isn't on. If you know, that's what I sent out those instructions. What are you on, a laptop?
Yeah.
Then the bottom left, there should be, if you scroll, if you take your cursor toward your bottom left of your screen, down in the black part, it should be a little camera and it says start video or stop video.
Okay.
If you click that, it should bring your picture. There you are.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay.
Okay, Suzanne, I'll turn it over to you then. Jennifer's going to keep letting people in, okay?
Okay, and Jennifer, are you going to post the agenda in the chat?
Yes, I will do that right now.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm going to call to order our annual meeting Council of Members for the League of Women Voters of New York State. I want to make sure everybody realizes, so we're trying to do this so eventually everybody will be heard, but while we're doing presentations, if you could all keep yourselves on mute, it really facilitates everybody being able to hear well and clearly. And we appreciate everybody's cooperation, and we will have a time after all the presentations for questions and comments. As the meeting goes on, if you would like to put comments and questions in the chat box, please do. Laura and Jennifer and I will be monitoring the chat box as we can, and we'll report out on those questions and comments as appropriate. Before we go any further, I'd like to introduce Jennifer Clark. She's the Secretary of the New York State Board, and she will present the credentials of our delegates.
Hi, everyone. Just so you all know, we have 103 delegates registered, representing 36 local leagues, 1 ILO, and 1 MAL unit, as well as 15 proxy votes. Zoom indicates that there are currently 94 participants present, whereas we only need 14 individuals for a quorum. I can confirm we have a quorum for this event, and we can continue to conduct our business. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. And I would like to welcome everybody. It's really wonderful to have so many people come to a member meeting, and if not fully live as we can be. In our virtual spaces, we've seen a greater attendance than in some of our live events. I want to start, first of all, with a round of applause for all of you and all of the leagues in the state who have absolutely stepped up in the last 3 months to get voters the information they need with all the changes in our elections and explaining absentee voting. You all have been just terrific, and our reputation is golden all across the state. So thank you. Give yourselves a round of applause. So since we have done that.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, are we there? Okay. A great benefit of our enforced stay at home has been the extended use of the virtual space, and that most of us are getting more and more comfortable with it, especially Zoom. I mean, we've been Zooming our grandchildren's parties and reading stories and book clubs, informal meetings, trainings. They've all seen great attendance, and they've all kept us more in touch maybe than we were before. In the last 100 days of the pandemic, many people have been riveted to this virtual space. And at the same time, through the streaming and the virtual world, we have borne witness to the brutal murder of George Floyd at the hands of rogue law enforcement officers. We've also seen an outpouring day after day of peaceful protesters exercising their First Amendment rights to protest the killing of George Floyd and countless other Black lives, and demanding change, demanding an end to the systemic racial injustice and inequality. I came to understand in a very visceral way that I'd never had the worry and the fear that my teenage son would come to into harm's way if confronted by the police out on the streets that an African-American mother experiences every day. We, the League, and our mission, empowering voters and defending democracy, must be part of the solution to the systemic racism, supporting policy and legislative reforms that will create systemic change and stand as allies with civil rights groups in our communities. Our work supporting all voters getting access to and casting their ballots, giving communities information about elections, and calling out voter suppression is vital. It is critical for our communities to be able to learn about candidates, question the candidates, and then hold their governments, local and state, accountable. As we speak out and encourage voters to use their muscles to vote for change, we also need to keep up our own assessment of our organization and our commitment to change. Our diversity, equity, and inclusion policies are the start of action for change. Our policy, the League of Women Voters, is an organization fully committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion and principle and in practice. Diversity, equity, and inclusion are central to the organization's current and future success, engaging all individuals, households, communities, and policymakers in creating a more perfect democracy. The League of Women Voters of New York took on a commitment with the National League to develop our action plans for diversity, equity, and inclusion. The League of Women Voters of US is leading a transformation of the organization necessary for us to be the robust and successful in our mission for another 100 years. Many of our local leagues and many of our members have embraced the work of DEI. Leading our DEI efforts for change is Regina Tillman from the Albany League and our Vice President for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Regina will take the next few minutes to review the DEI task force work she's leading across the state with engagement from many local leagues, and I'll update you about resolutions that are in process for the National Convention. Regina.
Thank you, Suzanne, for the introduction. And I think I'm flipping the script just a tiny bit. I'm going to start off with a couple comments and then in a more general sense, and then go into the task force elements. And I thank you as well for addressing in your opening remarks one of the pressing issues of this time, if not the issue, that is the sharply exposed level of injustice exacted upon Black communities in the United States still. And I say still as associated with a 400-year timeline beginning in 1619 when Africans were first brought to these shores. And as very discouraging as this time is, I have personally come to find sources of encouragement that perhaps something has finally changed. Something has finally happened in the hearts and minds of men and women in this country to desire better, to desire equality for their fellow citizens of Black and brown skin. And focusing on the League for those signs of encouragement, In this time, my fellow leaguers are busy emailing to each other information on how to be anti-racist and how to become an ally to Black people in their struggle for equality. Fellow leaguers, as in my hometown of Albany, were developing a direction to the state board to address the legacy of racism in the league since the inception of the movement for women's suffrage. Local leaguers are conducting in-depth discussions on diversity and inclusion within their member meetings. And as you mentioned as well, Suzanne, National has issued several statements since June 2nd, actually, of commitment to civil rights, to dismantling systemic racism, to racial justice. And those interested, if they missed it, they can check out the June 2nd mailing from our president for details on those statements. And just this morning, I joined a national subcommittee tasked with preparing a resolution for presentation at the League's National Convention in 2 weeks. A resolution that is hoped that all state leagues will be able to fully support in addressing racism in this country with a call for enough is enough. And at the state level, DEI, as both policy and strategic action, was added to the New York State Board of Directors as a leadership focus area last year. And in the past year, resources for local development and local discussion on DEI have been shared in the state voter and plans laid for tangible actions to be taken. I can take this opportunity now to announce that the kickoff of the New York State Task Force, currently with about 15 local leagues, is occurring. And I would refer you to the DEI report in your council kit, pages 12 to 14, for details on what the task force will be addressing. I can also announce with this, with great pleasure, that a contingency of 9 local leagues joined me on applying for the first ever National League DEI grant. And we were awarded our grants this past month in May. What this means is intensive and specialized training for each applicant to become a local leader in diversity, inclusion, and equity. It also means pooled funds for which will allow us consultation with a racial justice educator and development of a virtually held workshop for New York State League members across the state at a nominal fee. So, in conclusion, I'm here to say that we all need to look to the rest of 2020 and beyond with an eye on the resources that can help us as individuals and as league members become better citizens and as league members become better citizens with civil rights securely positioned on an equal footing with voting rights. So if your league is not yet represented on our task force, feel free to reach out to me with your named designee before June 30th. To those leagues that already responded with a designee, many thanks. And I thank you all in attendance for tonight for giving me your time and attention. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Regina. Next up on the agenda is the budget, the thing we must do. The rest are bonus events. And I'm going to introduce Steve Kobrick, who is the chair of the budget committee. And I want to thank all of the people in the budget committee for their work, which include Judy Weinstein of Rochester, Joyce Whitehead from Huntington, Lori Robinson, our state treasurer, and Nancy Rosenthal from the state board. Thank you very much. It's always a task that has to be done quickly and efficiently between the end of January and the middle of March. And they managed to get it done. So Steve, the floor is yours.
For those of you I haven't had the pleasure to have met, I'm Steve Kober from the Fightin, Saratoga County League of Women Voters. You should all have received the budget explanation in the council kit. If anybody has not seen it, you might want to take a look at it before you vote on it or not. But if anybody has any specific questions or comments on it, please speak now or forever hold your peace. In that case, I'd like to make a motion to approve the budget unless there's any debate on it.
Is there any debate?
I'll second the motion.
Oh, okay. Doesn't need a second. It's from the committee. Okay. So we're going to.
Wait, we have a question on the. We have
Okay.
2 questions. Margaret Goodfellow, you were the first one to flag you had a question.
Margaret, you can unmute yourself and give your say your question.
You're still muted, Margaret.
Yeah.
It says unmute on my screen.
Now you're fine. You're good. Oh no, now you muted again.
Okay, hold on.
All right, now you're good. Yep.
Okay. Oh, thank you so much for being so patient with me on this. I turned over the budget to our own treasurer to have her review it because I am not a financial person per se. And so she wrote back to me and she had some questions. Well, she had some comments. She had 2 questions. One was under account 5200, payroll related expenses. Under the salaries 5200-1, she saw that that number was quite a bit higher than last year's actuals, than this projected for this budget year. And she does know that Jennifer Wilson's salary was covered by some fundraising, but in the narrative, it sounded like she was hired for most of the current year, which I sent her an email back and said that is the case. She was hired for the current year, most of the current year. And that she noted the 26,000, 16% increase over this year's projected budget seemed high. The other payroll expense under pension 5209-1 rose, but it more than doubled over this year's projected expense. And then the other line, another line was 5202-1 and health insurance 5216-1, both decreased from this year, which seemed counterintuitive to her. The second, I hope everyone got that first question. And the second area was about the state convention for next year.
Hang on a minute, Margaret, do you
Yes.
want Steve or me to answer the first question first and then go on to the other?
Yes,
Okay,
that would be good. Because
Steve, do you want me to take it?
Yes, please.
Okay. This is Laura Bierman, for those of you who are wondering who's talking, because I know when we have this many squares, it's hard to figure out who's actually talking. So on the payroll, what she's comparing to, Margaret, is the budget for this year. And
Yeah.
Jennifer's salary was not in the budget this year.
That was my contributions.
Right?
Okay,
Yeah, so her salary was not included in that 163,000 that you see in the salaries budgeted for this year. And then she came back to us in late September. So we are over budget on that, but we did raise the money to cover that salary with donations. So even though you're not seeing it there, that's why the salary increases so much over budget, because she, we put that salary in actual expenses and it wasn't ever budgeted. And we don't change the budget during the year. So even though she came back, we don't change the budget. We just have explanations like this that, as long as we can explain why it's different. The health insurance, I can tell you, it has to do with only full-time employees are eligible for health insurance at the state league. If they get insurance somewhere else, there is a medical buyout that we provide to full-time employees. We did have Jennifer, takes health insurance, and another employee that took health insurance who left us in January. Were 2 full-time employees. So the one who left us, has now, we're not obviously paying for her health insurance, so it decreases now what we had expected to be covering for health insurance, since we only have 1 full-time employee right now taking health insurance. The pension, that varies each year, and again, all employees are eligible for that, and it varies each year. The IRS, the IRS rulings, we can do it 2% or 3%, and it's a match. And just recently, a couple of part-time employees signed up for it who hadn't signed up for it before. So now we're, and we match only if they participate. So we are, it's been increased a little bit because of that. For next year, we increased that. So does that answer them all? And the payroll related expenses other is the amount that we pay to a payroll service that does our payroll. Oops.
It's me barking. No. Oh, thank you for that one. Thanks for your answers. Can I give my second question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. The state convention, it said it looked like in 2018, 2019, the convention brought in $36,900. That's under 4300-1. And it's budgeted to bring in about $25,000 next year under an expense account, facilities, lodging, meals, which covers expenses for board meetings and food and lodging expenses at the state convention. Last year's actual was $39,416. And the budgeted amount for next year is $35,000. This seems to, pardon?
I'm saying 25,000. I don't see 35.
Oh, maybe she did a typo. This seems to
In
be
the expenses, Steve, she's seeing the 35,000.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. In account 5266. Margaret, what we do every year for every other year, because convention's only every other year, is we always budget income of 25,000 and expenses of 20,000, hoping that we might have a $5,000 difference. In 18-19, we did raise more income than expected, but you have to remember that it depends on how many delegates come and how much money we actually make, as income each time. So we've kind of just chosen as a figure that 25,000. And last convention, we did really well. We had a lot of people come to convention. If we went 2 years back before that, you might not see those same numbers. And the 35,000 has the 20,000 for convention, but it also has board meetings. It has some other meetings that might have charges and other items in there. So of the 35,000, 20,000 is for state convention.
Well, she thought that it appeared as though the league lost about $2,500 on last year's convention, and that there was a projection that you could lose $10,000 on next year's convention. But that's what it looked like to her, so I wanted to bring it up.
Well, okay, because you're comparing apples and oranges, Margaret.
Yeah.
The income is the state convention income of 25,000 in next year's budget. The expenses of 35,000 aren't just convention expenses. There's other expenses in there as well. So that's why I said of that 35,000, only 20,000 is projected for convention expenses.
Okay, I did mention to her in my response to her that about the convention is that I thought that as local league memberships seem to be continuing in decline, that there may be fewer eligible voting delegates because locals are unable to send representatives to convention due to cost, and then there'll be proxy voting in its place. So that was my take on it as terms of some of the numbers you were projecting.
Also, Margaret, the
Yeah.
number of local leagues we have, because
Yeah.
if we've had a
Sure.
couple leagues this year that merged.
Yes,
And
I thought
so that means there's fewer delegates allowed to that local league and all. So yes, you're correct in that. But the bigger thing is that there's in this budget for next year is 25,000 expected income or budgeted income and 20,000 of expenses.
on the ed fund side, I saw that the income for reporting has declined, but I also saw a zero number for the UN event. And that event brings in a lot of money. So I didn't.
It brought in a lot of money last year. That was the first year in multiple years that it brought in. It brought us in, I think, 7,000 or 8,000 last year. And before that, it only brought us in about 2,000 or 3,000. And it's an incredible amount of work. And we, after last year's, it's a lot of staff time and a lot of staff logistic work. We decided that we weren't going to do it this coming year, especially with so much on the election, and that we could decide if we wanted to do it again after this year. But it's just so much time and so much effort when we were only making 2,000 or 3,000. It wasn't really worth the work that we spent on it. Right.
Yeah.
But last year it did really well.
Yes, it did.
Yep. Is that it?
I think so. I mean, I know that you're funding 411 in that for students inside Albany. You've already gone out and asked for donations. So hopefully they'll get some money for that because that's very expensive. Both of those are.
Yep. We do that every year. Yeah.
Okay, that's all I have.
Thanks. Barbara Epstein, I think, had a question too. Do you, Barbara, still?
I do.
Okay.
All right. We do direct mailing, both on the regular budget and on the educational foundation. I just wonder what our numbers look as far as what it costs us for requesting funding and what our income goes on both sides.
I can't tell you the percentage. It's a very good question. I should look at that. But you can see that, each year we do 3 big mailings.
Right.
That are actual mailings. One's in the fall for the EF, one's in February or March for the league, and one's in June. And you will see that we do keep the income separate by appeal, and we keep the expenses separate so that we can see how much is coming in from the appeals. And I can tell you that Marissa at the state office is helping us to analyze the donor for the past few years to try and figure out answers like that. One thing that makes it a little bit more difficult, and I'm not complaining, this is good news, is that when we send out these paper mailings, a lot of people are going online and donating. And if we don't know that they're donating in relationship to a specific appeal letter, we have to put it in member contribution line instead of that appeal. So our member contribution line is actually going up because more people are giving on online instead of sending us back that little stub saying it's for a specific appeal. So that's one of the things Marissa and I are talking through and trying to figure out how best to present this to the board and the new development committee to show them what our different appeals are doing and which ones are more successful.
Are we paying a percentage for credit card use?
Yes, we do. But I will also tell you that online, if anyone has ever donated or paid for things online for us, at the bottom of the form, it always says, there's a little box and you can say, I'd like to give 3% more to cover the credit card fees. We have over 50% of the people check that box. Okay. So I didn't think they really would, but they, when we put it on, we said, let's try it, see what's happened. And people do check the box, so that helps.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, Leanne, did you have a question about the increase in the chat? Leanne, I'm not going to try your last name. Are you?
Hi. Hi. Yeah, I was just looking at line, it's 4120, the projects programs income line.
Yes.
And like what, so
Yes.
what were we planning to do in order
Okay.
to get that increase?
That is explained in the page before the budget in the council kit. This is something for newer people in our, looking at the state budget will wonder what this is. But it is something we do every year. What we do is most of our expenses are in the league budget. All of our salary expenses are in the league budget. But as you all know, we spend a lot of time working on educational programs or educational administration, meaning the foundation. So what we can do is at the end of each month, we charge the Education Foundation for any expenses that the league incurred related to education, and we reimburse the league for those expenses from the EF. And that's because the EF, it's easier to raise money in the EF because it's tax deductible contributions and all. So that number is always what we're projecting will be reimbursed by the EF. And you can see that we have it a lot higher for next year. And a lot of that has to do with that grant money that you may have read about that we've gotten. Because that came to the EF, that came to the EF, but the expenses for printing, for making things, for websites, for all of that is all in the league side. So the money will come over from the EF to pay for those on a monthly basis. So hopefully, I tried to explain it simply, and hopefully you understand what I'm trying to say. So, Leanne, does that kind of answer what you were looking for?
Yes. Yes,
Great.
thank you.
Yep. Okay, so.
Any other questions?
Yep. Wait, there's 3 new messages.
Okay.
No, it doesn't look like any of them are questions, so it's okay.
Okay, we're going to take the vote by a poll, which you should see on your screen. Jennifer Wilson is, I think, managing this. There we go. So you just pick a box, yes or no, and it will be magically tallied.
I think I'm supposed to abstain.
So we
Now,
have
those of you who are not on video and are not seeing the poll, I think we're going to call out the phone numbers or the names. Is that right, Jennifer?
Yeah, we're still only at 88 of 95 right now. So many people are on the phone.
Jennifer, though, that counts you, me, and Steve, and the 3 of us don't vote anyway.
Yeah, I'm not voting.
Delegates.
Okay, so we're at 89 of 95 now, and we have 3 on the phone, so that should be everybody. And of the people who voted, everyone has voted aye, so we will end the poll. And then it looks like we have just 3 people on the phone, so let's start with last 4 of your phone number is 6897. I'm going to unmute you.
I vote yes.
Great, thank you. And then next, last 4 of your phone number is 3840. You're unmuted.
I vote yes.
Great, thank you. And then finally, last 4 of your phone number is or I'm sorry, 5144, unmuted.
It's Sally. I vote yes.
Thanks, Sally. Okay, then we have a unanimous yes vote.
We also have 10 yes votes by proxy.
Okay, great. So 89 plus 3 plus 10.
No, that's so terrific that we've had that much participation. It's just fabulous. So I want to thank the Budget Committee for your work. And I also want to take this moment to just thank all of you. Our contributions in membership and from local leagues has been extraordinary over the last 12 months. And all of your support means a lot to the work we do at the State League to facilitate getting your information and helping you get information to voters all across the state. So I want to thank you. It means a lot to the people in the State League when they feel that support from our grassroots in our funding. So thank you. Okay, we're going to move now to presentations from State Board members and some of our State Board staff. And this is what's going to be a look forward. And I'm going to ask that you let them all do their presentations. They've been asked to 3 to 5 minutes maximum. And then we'll have lots of time for questions and comments before we go to our last couple of things, which will be announcements and directions to the board. So Jennifer Wilson, our Deputy Director, if you'd like to start, please.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Suzanne. Hey, everybody. So this is like one of the first Zooms I've been on where I haven't prepared a PowerPoint, so I hope you guys don't get bored. So just kidding. So yeah, since the coronavirus hit at such a weird time during the legislative session, pretty much everything I'm going to mention is just like unfinished business that we had this year. So starting right off with redistricting, which was such a big issue for us this year. We were really one of the key groups working on this when nobody else was really talking about it. Of course, we had 8 of our 10 first independent redistricting commissioners appointed. We still have 2 left to go. We're still working on this. We're working with a few Latinx groups trying to get some Latinx representation on the commission, because as of right now, there is 0. And there's only 1 woman who's been appointed to the 10-member commission, which obviously is not representative of New York State. So we've been working on that. We're going to continue to work on that, continuing to strengthen partnerships on that so that we can help the public be educated so that they know what it's all about and how they can be involved. And pivoting to voting, which is something that we had great accomplishments in 2019, and we were very hopeful that in 2020 we were going to check one more box off our list with automatic voter registration. And unfortunately, because of how things went this year, there wasn't good communication between the Senate and the Assembly over the agencies that they wanted to be included in the automatic voter registration bill. And ultimately, it was a lot of back and forth with the advocates in the middle, and we were not able to reach a consensus. We have been working remotely during the work from home pandemic, trying to work with the bill sponsors in both the Senate and the Assembly to try and reach an agreement on what agencies should be included. But unfortunately, this is something that's going to have to get pushed to 2021 because it did not happen this year. And then some wins that we had in 2019 that we'll work on again were some constitutional amendments that we passed related to voting in 2019 that we'll get to do again now and then have on the ballot for voters to vote on. No excuse absentee voting, which would have been great to have now, but we'll have to wait until next year. Was one of the reforms we passed in 2019 that we're going to be working on again. And then same-day voter registration, or eliminating the 10-day deadline within our state constitution to register to vote, getting rid of that deadline. Then we'll just have to get rid of the 25-day deadline that's written in statute. So that's another great thing, a win from 2019 that we'll get to work on again next year. We also had done some work this year on reforming JCOPE, the Joint Commission on Public Ethics, and that is also a constitutional amendment. We had really hoped to see first passage of that this year, and unfortunately that didn't happen. This reform, this constitutional amendment, essentially would take JCOPE and make it truly an independent agency so that it wasn't the legislature picking the people who were supposed to be watchdogging them. And another constitutional amendment we worked on was consolidating our court system. So we worked with the Simplify the Court Coalition this year to try and get a constitutional amendment introduced that would consolidate our 11 trial courts into a 3-court system. So it's much easier for people to navigate, much less expensive to navigate, and much more friendly to those who have to interact with the judicial system for whatever reason. And then the last thing I'll mention, which is something that we talk about every single year, it's never going to go away, is funding for early voting. We worked really hard in 2020 to try and get funding for early voting. And unfortunately, in the budget, it just never happened. And in a way, we almost got lucky with coronavirus with regard to funding for voting, because we had this big federal influx of dollars that were meant to be related to spending on elections for coronavirus. So getting PPE, getting extra staff, having poll sites very clean and sanitary. But ultimately, those funds is what's paying for early voting this year. So without those funds, the counties would be struggling. They would be going to their own counties for money that's not there. So what we really need to look ahead is having a long-term stream of funding for early voting. It needs to be funded every single year from the state. We can't rely on counties to pick up the bill every single year, especially in a big election year like this one. The other last thing that I think Sally has more to say about is campaign finance. We did ultimately get campaign finance reforms this year, but we're not exactly thrilled with them. There was also, similar to the issue with early voting, there was no funding for it. So it was another unfunded mandate, this time a state unfunded mandate. So there's a lot to do. There's never a dull moment. And I'm sure we'll be working on more issues related to voting and good government in the future. So I think, like I said, Sally has a little bit more to say about that.
Laura, I am unmuted. Great, thank you. I think, Jennifer, that's the first time I ever heard anyone mention much of coronavirus in the same sentence. We, on campaign finance, what happened is the commission did make a recommendation, the Commission on a Public Financing System. It had some major flaws, and most of the good government groups were not, all of them were not happy with it. It was challenged in the courts, and when that happened, then the legislature just passed it as it was, despite the fact that some of the major flaws in it were flaws that could have only been done by the legislature. And the reason the commission said they didn't do them is they didn't have the power to do them. But there are two major things we will not give up on, and we and the other groups will keep pushing on next year. That's lower limits for parties and pay to play. So things that we've been working on for a really long time. The other thing I was going to talk about were the updates. The healthcare update and the election law and government update. They're sort of different creatures, because the healthcare update was more of a substantive update, and the election law and government updates are more of what I call maybe a recodifying and simplifying of our positions. And maybe I'll have to be honest, we might have just bitten off a little more than I could chew for this year. So the healthcare update, the board is looking at the materials now, and that will happen. It will go to local leagues by September, and then we'll be looking for you to hold your meetings and have as many discussions as you can fit in your busy schedules. And I think the consensus won't be due till the spring. So that's the healthcare update. The other two things, the election law and government, we've had a lot of wonderful volunteers, and we got sort of the committees organized, but they didn't get so much off the ground this year. And then, of course, things happened in election law with the machines, and then the coronavirus happened. So those are probably going to really get underway from a committee standpoint next year, and they'll go to local leagues a year from September. But they're not as critical in that they really aren't changing any substance. We don't expect them to substantially change any positions we have. They're more of a codifying and a restatement, and some of them are intertwined with what's going on at the national convention, so it probably worked out for the best. that they've been delayed a little bit. That's it.
Great. I just want to mention one more thing that's kind of it's not necessarily a look ahead necessarily, I'm not sure, but you know, in light of everything that's been going on, the league we stepped out of our comfort zone a little bit with supporting 50A, the repeal of the law that basically allows police officers who do bad things to hide behind a veil, essentially, or a curtain. I'm not explaining it very well, but it's something we hadn't worked on in the past, and we took it from the perspective of, you know, these are public employees and the public has the right to know how their tax dollars are being spent and the people that they're being spent on. And we were thrilled when that bill passed. And I think in the future, looking ahead, we'll be looking at more of these sort of bills that are really focused on the public's right to know about what's really going on and kind of looking at the bigger picture of everything that's going on. And I think that's really exciting because it's something we haven't done before.
Thank you, Jennifer. Sally, thank you. Hope travel safe, Sally. Next,
May I ask one question?
we're going to
Suzanne.
take questions later at
Okay.
the end of the presentations, please. Judy Gornstein for Voters Earth. You need to unmute yourself. There you go.
I did. Okay. All right. So how will New York State League and local leagues continue to achieve our mission of registering, educating, and having people turn out to vote? 3 months ago, when we held our very first and only regional training this year in New York City, we had no idea that 2 weeks later, New York State would be shut down because of the coronavirus, and we would have to stay in our homes. 2 months ago, as the coronavirus cases were spiraling and deaths were rising at an alarming rate in New York State, we had no idea that as of today, all the counties in New York State would begin opening up. I brought this up because just as in the recent past, we had no way of knowing what would be in the near future, today we also cannot know what will be happening in the next 5 months. How did the June primary go? How did the county BOEs handle all the absentee ballots? Was voter turnout higher? Over the next months, will all counties continue to open up, or will we have to shut down? Will we all be able to vote absentee in November, or will it be like in the past that we need a reason? There are things we do know, though. The first thing is there is no certainty now. We can't be sure of anything. Right now, we know there's increased momentum for people to be involved, demanding changes, especially in our justice system. We know that people in underserved communities, as well as the young, are energized. We know that their votes give them power, and we do know that local leagues, ILOs, and our MALs are motivated to fulfill our mission. How do we use this energy and motivation to register, educate, and then get out the vote? All leagues will be receiving a voter service survey in the next week or two, asking about questions leading up to and on the date of the primary. We are going to ask you, as all we do for all surveys, please complete and return them to the state so we can compile and share the information we get from you. Number two, the toolkits will be updated with accurate dates and information. We have asked all the leagues who have held virtual candidate meetings to send descriptions of what they did and evaluate how it went. We will also be including the Get Out the Vote efforts and activities leagues did for the June 23rd primaries. Our voter service committee, Sheila, Jane, Kate, Nancy, Suzanne, and myself will continue to have phone contact with our respective leagues, and you in the leagues are asked, if you have any questions or comments, to contact your liaisons. We also will be holding Zoom meetings like the one we just held on June 2nd, where 90 members attended and not only heard from 5 leagues what they were doing on getting out the vote, but then the attendees were able to modify these ideas and use them in their communities. I just want to tell you one example that I just found out yesterday. St. Lawrence Mal had spoken about their initiative to put flyers about voting in voting assistance packages. And then the League of Women Voters of Buffalo contacted their school lunch program people this week. And today and tomorrow, we'll be having 2,500 flyers put in school lunch packets. So that's one of the things that our webinars do. They let people share ideas and then bring them back. So what do our local leagues need to do in the next 5 months? As always, begin making your plans, but unlike in the past, you need to plan for all contingencies. And as you plan, as always, remember to keep our standards of nonpartisanship in place. Over the summer, if your county has opened up to the point you can have in real time virtual registration drives, do them, but always, of course, wear a mask. And we ask that you wear a mask saying vote or register to vote. As always, network with other groups. Contact those particularly underserved communities and put a major emphasis on registering people in these communities. As always, begin educating and begin planning for get out the vote as soon as you begin registering voters. Plan how you will evaluate if your efforts to get out the vote were successful. And that's important. We want to be able to evaluate, did what you do works. This year, remember, you can also have people sign up to receive text reminders, which are really, really helpful because we know especially new voters need 3 reminders before they go out to vote. Even as the counties open up, there will be vulnerable people who will not be going out. Consider how you're going to reach these people. Have plans to reach students in both colleges and high schools if they are back to school or if they are taking classes virtually. It will be different how you reach out to them. Your contacts may remain the same, but how you register them may be different. And you can go on to the state website and look to see how the League of Women Voters of Huntington is using students to engage other students on Instagram. This year, as you are planning the registration activities, consider what you will do if New York has to shut down again. How will you register voters then? What tools will you need? What and how will you network? These are all important. When you are planning to educate voters and hold candidate forums, once again, you will need to plan for all contingencies. Will you be able to hold forums in big venues with large audiences? Maybe, but probably not. You may be able to hold candidate forums in small venues with limited amount of attendees, or hold them in studios where candidates and moderators are together, but the forum is live streamed. You may also need to or want to hold the forums as many leagues have done in a virtual world using a Zoom webinar or similar format. Although these did require a lot of time and work in preparation, the outcome was very rewarding. More people attended these webinars than ever attended live in-face forums. And then afterwards, hundreds of people saw the videos. The takeaway is that even if you are able and want to hold candidate forums live face-to-face, make sure that it is live streamed. Make sure that you do have a video and that this will be able to appear on your website, on YouTube, because that's how we reach the most people. And lastly, as you plan to get out the vote for the November 3rd election, plan for all the contingencies that may occur in October. Remember again, getting out the vote starts when you register people. Plan how you will turn the people you registered into voters and how you will evaluate if you were successful. The time we are in right now is on our side. People, especially the underserved and the youth, are engaged. They want change. Will this energy continue through the fall? Will they realize their vote is their power? Will they know when to vote and where and how? This is up to us, but I know we can and we will register, educate, and get out the vote by planning as we always do, working together and building on our strengths. Thank you all for what you do.
Thank you, Judy. That was quite a list. And I will reiterate the virtual forums, and this is coming in from across the country. Everybody who's doing it is seeing wonderful number of viewers coming to these virtual forums, and a lot of it is for local primaries and local elections. So that's terrific. Our next speaker is our Executive Director and Fearless Leader, Laura, who's going to talk to you about what's going on with civics. It's kind of exciting at the moment, and she's going to ask you also to do something.
Yes, I'm not going to repeat everything that's been going on in civics, but the important piece right now is that for those of you who didn't know, I represented the league on a New York State Education Department task force on civic readiness. And we were actually the only community good government organization on it. Most of it was teachers, some were private schools or educational advocates. But we were the ones that were on it for, why is civics important to the kids? So anyway, the task force is done, unless they find some more money, I guess. But we came up with recommendations, and there were 3 different recommendations. One was on civic readiness definitions. One was on a seal that kids could do certain things and get a seal on their certificate saying that they are civically ready. And third is a capstone project that would be a multi-year project that kids could undertake during high school to engage in a real project that would be community oriented on some issue in their community. So the task force developed a recommendation. It went to the Board of Regents. It was presented to the Board of Regents in January, just this year. And now they're soliciting input from parents, from teachers, from students, from anyone. And so I am going to, after this, this Zoom meeting, I will send everyone the link that has the presentation about the recommendations and also the survey link. And if you would share it with anyone and also take it yourselves. You do not have to be part of the education system. Many of us are parents, even if the kids are older, what you thought that they should be learning. And we also know what the kids today should be learning about civics. So anyone can answer it, and they're looking for input statewide. So I will send that information out. The other piece is, that I'll just mention briefly is that the coalition we work with and New York City League is also on the coalition. Which is a much bigger coalition than the task force was. It has School Board Association and Superintendents Association and other associations and organizations as well. They have developed a media literacy lesson plan that they would like to push out and get the state education department to encourage high schools to use. And that is just coming out probably tomorrow or Monday. And so again, I will share that link once it does go out with everyone, and you can certainly talk to your schools, because many of you do have connections in the schools, partly because of students inside Albany and partly because you're doing such a great job of registering high school students. So this is all put together. It's all one big effort that we're doing to try and get these kids educated, and they want to learn. They want to learn this. So I will share those links with everyone later, and we encourage you all to participate.
Thanks, Laura. And following up on more about what's going on with youth, Crystal Joseph from the State Board at the Youth Portfolio. Crystal, are you there?
I am here.
There you are.
So I am going to share my screen in a little bit that just kind of speaks to sort of what the students have been experiencing with the pandemic. So if I can have the credentials, Jennifer, to share my screen, if that's possible.
You should be able to do it without them.
Let's see, it says that you have it disabled.
Oh no, okay, let me see.
Okay.
Give me 1 second, okay. Okay, I just set it to all participants, see if it works now. Sorry, I didn't realize we changed those.
Nope, it's still not allowing it.
Still? Okay, hold on. Let me see if I can. No. It's so weird.
I'll talk through it. Don't worry about it. So there's actually been a study by the Educational Trust in which they discussed coronavirus and educational equity. And so some of the key findings that came through the report was the fact that the pandemic has been disruptive to students, particularly students of color, and they're and students who come from low income backgrounds. So right now, the big concern for most, this is for the higher education community, is sort of this idea of financial insecurity, right? So if we're coupling sort of folks being registered to vote or not really knowing where their trajectory will be moving forward, there's a lot of moving parts to this conversation now. So when students were asked if they are excited about coming back to school this fall, the answer was yes. But they also met that with the fact that they needed a lot more support in terms of their emotional stability, and then also how to connect with life as this new form of reality. So those were two concerns that were raised. So in my PowerPoint presentation, I talk about some of the future goals for our organization. And obviously we want to build capacity with the young people in this space as best as we can. Judy pointed to the fact that we use as much of these virtual tools as we possibly can. I think that is going to be imperative moving forward, and also creating comprehensive local subsystems. So similar to what Huntington is doing, and as these modules are being put out into the virtual space, that we might be able to replicate them for different counties. So definitely go to the state website to view those modules and realize how you can incorporate them at your community. One of the things that we're interested in still doing, yes.
Sorry, it's Laura. We just made you a co-host, so then maybe you can share your screen. Try it now.
All right.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's okay. Let's see if it works. Let's see. Nope, still not working. It's okay. Don't worry. I'll just talk through it for the most part. Sometimes these things happen. So one of the, just to continue with that, we want to sort of make sure that there's the civics collaboration going on, and Laura spoke to sort of what that plan looks like at the state level. So as those links are provided, definitely review that. And then there's long-term planning for civics and what that looks like for us as an organization and how we can support students in this new space, that's something that will be determined. I think we want to make use of as many virtual platforms as we possibly can. I'm seeing someone else's screen right now. There's a lot of tech difficulties going on right now. But I can share these slides with everyone, so definitely you can look for that in an upcoming email. So one of the things that I wanted to sort of work on was, as the arts, music, and culture does start to come back into the fold in terms of meeting space, figuring out how we can use relationships between those worlds of the arts, music, and culture as a bridge to both our organization and the external community. So obviously doing voter registration drives is always important, but the Board of Regents Task Force defines civic readiness as the ability to make a positive difference in the public life of our communities through the combination of civic knowledge, skills, actions, mindsets, and experiences. So I think the young people, and we learned this from sort of the SIA model, which obviously is our tried and true initiative, and folks love it the best, is how we can get more youth voices into the conversation. And they're always talking about the fact that SIA is an amazing experience, but they also want to translate that into actionable next steps. So my goal is to actually listen to them and figure out how to make that possible, but also using the arts, music, and culture space as different conduits in which the conversation can continue. So those are some of the future goals that I have sort of in this space of youth and civics education. Thank you all.
Thank you, Crystal. That was inspiring. Okay, so we have a little bit of time, maybe 10 minutes or so, for questions or comments. And I suggest you just let us know in the chat box if you have something you want to share out loud with everyone.
I think Leslie Sigal, I don't know if you still have a question. She's the one that had the question before. Leslie?
Hi, Laura. Yes, thank you. Hi, thank you so much. Hi, Suzanne. How are you? Thanks. For those of you who don't know me, I'm from the New York City chapter. And my question was kind of referring back to what May Takahashi had asked earlier around, with things moving so quickly now, and I know we're all really overburdened with everything that's going on and all the work we have to do. Is there a thought to create some sort of a repository of all the legislation or positions that the State League has taken, so that we can actually just look at ourselves as we're kind of trying to react in the moment to things that are going on?
Jennifer, you want to take that, or Sally?
Oh, Sally, probably.
No, I think I probably take that.
Okay.
Well, the repository of the positions we have taken over the years, and it's updated at the end of every legislative session, is impact on issues. It's not the most user-friendly document. I admit that, but it's what we have for now. We also have our work and legislative, issues by category on the website. So those are updated as much as we can get to them. And in terms of one of the reasons we were doing the election law and the government update was to those sections of impact. We rely primarily on nationals positions. So a lot of that is in the written, lengthy narrative part of impact on issues. So we're planning on starting with that, just so it would be easier for people to understand our position, how we have at the state level applied national positions too. We have some of our own positions, but mostly, especially in ethics, they are, and transparency, they're based on national positions. But for something that's going on right now that you have a question about, like for example, I got a question from Leslie about 50A, and I knew that we had taken that position. Jennifer wasn't here when we did it, but we did that last year in conjunction with some other groups. It wasn't a primary focus of ours, and we just joined in a memo in support with other groups. So it wouldn't necessarily be highlighted on our website or in impact, but we did take that position. So either Laura, Jennifer, and I are a resource at any. First, I would look at the impact on issues, which is updated at the end of each legislative session. And then I would just email us.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Okay, Leanne, I think you had a question. Hirabashi, you need to unmute yourself. There you go.
Yeah, hi, this is Leanne Hirabayashi from the Cooperstown area. We have an issue in our county that we're seeking support from, and I don't know if this is the right space for it, but we have a movement to declare our county a Second Amendment sanctuary, for that the local government would not enforce any higher gun control laws at all. So, and we were seeking some support, and unfortunately we weren't able to get it. And COVID has put the movement on hold, but we anticipated opening up again. And we were just trying to figure out how we can find out more information if there's anybody else who's dealing with this, or, I mean, we see this as something that will actually continue. There will be more counties attempting this. So I was hoping maybe we could get some assistance from that, and if this isn't the right venue, that's fine as well.
Leanne, I can give you a quick answer on that. It was somebody before you, I think, because I'm pretty sure you said you're Cooperstown, right? And I think it was from the Cooperstown League before as well that it brought this up to our attention. And I put whoever it was, and I'm sorry, I have to go back and look at old emails. I can't remember off the top of my head. In touch with the New Yorkers Against Gun Violence, that we are part of that coalition, and we put them in touch with that coalition and another coalition. Right. And also I think NICLU we suggested. So what, we can certainly put it out there and see if other local leagues are having this issue in their counties. I think, the best, and Sally and Jennifer, maybe you have other ideas, but I can look back and see what we recommended back then. But I'm pretty sure it was that New Yorkers Against Gun Violence and NICLU, and then there was another organization that we had worked with, and we suggested you reaching out to them and seeing if they could help. So
yeah, we got no response.
Well, then you always, when something like that happens, guys, always email me again. I'll find you some way to get an answer. We'll find someone else in the organization. We'll find, we have some other connections. So whenever, if we give you a suggestion and you don't get an answer from wherever we've sent you to, certainly reach out to us again. We'll see, we'll keep working with you to see what we can help you with. So Leanne, if you want to reach out to Jennifer and me later, we can see what we can do to help you again on that.
That would be great. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, Ramona had a question about do we have a sense of how prepared New York State is for the upcoming primary and subsequent elections, given the horror stories we've seen in Georgia and Wisconsin? And she just received her absentee ballot in Erie County, and it looks good, but she's wondering about actual voting process at polling places. Maybe Kate Doran, could you speak to that a little bit? She's on the state board and she's our election specialist. You need to unmute, Kate. Kate, you need to unmute. There you go.
Okay. Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for welcoming me. Well, I focus, of course, on New York City. I live in Brooklyn, and I pay close attention to the New York City Board of Elections, which is now meeting virtually only, but they meet once a week in New York City. They have been scrupulous in describing in their public meetings the sorts of PPE that they are using and the efforts that they are making to keep the public safe at early voting and on election day. They also have sent out thousands and thousands of applications for absentee ballots, and they are receiving them. And they're doing something interesting that I don't think most people know, but they are using vendors to send out the actual absentee ballots. The staff reviews the applications and then sends that information along to the vendors, and the vendors are actually sending out the ballots to people. My daughter got her absentee ballot. She applied online. I decided to do a test, so I applied by mail using the application that I received in accordance with the governor's executive order, and I have not yet received mine. So I feel confident that the New York City Board is handling things in accordance with the law and with the executive orders. And I'm happy to take any questions because I'm paying close attention. So I'm happy to take any specific questions.
Also, Jennifer, I don't know if you want to say anything about, Jennifer is having almost weekly conversations with the State Board of Elections too. And Jennifer, I don't know if you want to talk about anything they've been talking about to make sure the election is going to run smoothly. I lost you in my screen, but I know you're still there somewhere.
Yeah, I actually just talked to Bob Brum from the State Board of Elections today, and you know, it's a grind to try and get everything together, but all the counties have been having weekly, if not bi-weekly phone calls, and you know, it's going to be a challenge. I don't think we'll see anything close to what Georgia or Wisconsin saw, just strictly because I think the majority of voters are going to vote by absentee in New York State. They're not even going to attempt to go out in person. They had just sent us statistics at the beginning of this week of how many requests they've received. And they've received almost 1 million absentee ballot requests. So if you applied and you didn't get it yet, don't be surprised. They're slowly working through all of them. I'm sure that number is going to go up because the deadline, there's still a few days left, 5 days left until the deadline. So I think for the most part, people are just going to vote via absentee, and that's totally fine. As long as they're voting, I don't think we mind how they vote. So
that is true. In New York City, we have 79 early voting locations. I don't know anything about early voting in Georgia, but I think that could ameliorate problems on election day.
There's a question from Patricia Sevilla about how, and Laura, I think you might want to take this one. How can local leagues learn more about partnerships we have at the state level that we can leverage at the local level? It would be good to increase partnerships.
Yes. Well, we do have a list of groups that we, of coalitions that we are partnered in. And and just to let you know, if it's a statewide coalition, a local league cannot be in that coalition unless the state league's in the coalition. But once we're in the coalition, then anyone can be in the any local league can be in the coalition. So that's why, like the Fund for Modern Courts, which we've been working on court reform, they wanted, all local leagues to sign up as part of the coalition too. So we try and advertise that. That probably is a good point for us to do that and remind people of all the ones that you guys can join, because we are already in coalition with it. The other thing though, I must say is that it seems like, and I don't know, Jennifer and Sally might have something else to say about this, but I don't feel like there's as many formal coalitions as much. Often we're working more informally with different groups on different issues. And so we have our formal coalitions, and then we have other groups that we just work with. And so Patricia, on the ones that we just work with, I think it's hard to tell you exactly who you could contact. But again, it's kind of like Leanne had the question about gun control or gun violence. And if somebody in your league, if you want to know, we'll see what we can do and what contacts we have in any organizations that might be able to help you. I think the formal coalition, yes, we have a list, and we should do more to educate all the local leagues about that. The informal ones, it's a little harder for us to do that because it's not really a coalition, it's just working with them and we have contacts. so we can, help you if there's an issue that you want to know of a contact in a certain area. Just, email Jennifer or me, and we'll be happy to find a contact for you in that issue.
Okay, I'm not seeing any more questions, so if there are not, I'd like to move on to directions to the board. And we have Nancy Marr.
I had a question.
You do? Okay, sorry.
I raised my hand. I don't know if that was the way I was supposed to do
Oh,
it.
we're not really looking at that, but that's okay. Go ahead, Catherine.
I'm a member of the league in Northeast Westchester, and it's a large territory, and we got our list of polling sites, both for the early voting for the primary and for the primary, and I was astounded at we have one site for this really large area, and it's probably a 20 to 25 minute drive from my house, which is crazy. The site I usually vote at is 5 minutes from my house. And the one for the regular voting, now you have to understand, I got my absentee ballot a week ago, so I'm fine, but the run for the regular voting day, for the November day, June 23rd day, is almost as inconvenient. I mean, it's actually in another town, not even in our area, the early voting site. And I was wondering if anyone else has seen this also, that the early voting location is pretty bad. If you know Westchester County, I live in Bedford, the northeast corner, and the voting site for me is down in a town called Valhalla, which is like, it's just nothing to do with where I live. So I don't know what I can do about it. I don't think I can change it.
Part of the reason some of the sites are not as good as in the prior year is because they had to have enough space for the 6 feet between every voter and also every voting booth. So I think they were limited in not only that, but also the public spaces that were willing to open their doors to allow all these people to come in. I don't know if that's necessarily why Westchester selected the places that they selected, but I imagine that definitely had something to do with it. I know there were a number of counties that were struggling to even find correct places to have sites at because there are so many rules and so many restrictions the state board is putting on them for the safety of voters and the voting staff. But definitely it's something that we should keep an eye on for November. And if we are noticing that there's a big influx of like poll sites that are not up to snuff, then yes, I definitely think it's something that we should continue to track. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, I would say that a lot of people will find it almost impossible to vote. Now it is a primary, it's not the regular one, and they're highly contested primaries. I mean, we've got 4 and 5 candidates for our Democratic Assembly position, and similar number for a countywide position. But it just doesn't make sense to me. And because that means that everybody from all these different towns are all going to be voting in this one place. So it might have more space, but there's going to be so many more people there.
Can I say something? I received this card today from the Westchester Board of Elections. It's really, I don't know what to do.
Yes, that's the one I got.
Yeah, but my card sends me to Mount Vernon at an incorrect address. I mean, it's completely wrong. It gives the right venue, the Mount Pleasant Community Center, the wrong street, the wrong town. And I went on Vote 411, and then I went and they sent me to the right information, which is not this, it's in Valhalla. And I think, and I also got information from the Westchester League that sent out a chart with all the early voting venues, and it also a place in Valhalla. So this is clearly wrong. And I know that people in Newcastle, because I just happened to get their email, I'm not living there anymore, that they got an incorrect venue for early voting too. And I don't know, do I call the Board of Elections tomorrow? They can't send out new cards. But it's an issue if everyone is going to be going to, and now Mount Vernon's around 45 minutes from here. And I know it's wrong because I voted early voting. I already looked it up before I got the card because I haven't gotten my absentee ballot yet, and I am going to vote early if it doesn't come in the mail.
So this is a big problem.
It would be very helpful if everybody emails these issues to the State League, and the survey that Judy is sending out to collect data about how things are going for this election. It's really important. And if you're not aware of how useful the early voting survey was that everybody, so many of you helped us with, that was, Jennifer did testimony with that, and we were way ahead of all the other gurus in the amount of information, the data that we had. It was really important information. And we can do the same thing this time if everyone will just pitch in, tell us what's happening. The other thing I would suggest that I'm hearing sort of banging around here is we've been working to get a really good relationship, especially when we started on the early voting project, to build better relationships with the boards of elections in all the counties. Well, Kate sits in their meetings every week, and there's nothing like having an observer there, because they start to pay attention. Oh my God, the league lady's back. She's back. She's, you know, and you start getting drawn into, well, the dialogue. They start listening to you. So it's, if you can find somebody who's willing to put in, or a team of people who are willing to go to their meetings, it's one of the most powerful tools we have, is going as observers and then doing something with the information we get. So are there any more questions? Yeah, Judy, go ahead.
But I think for the immediate problem, if anybody in Westchester, like you, Sheila, has a problem, email me and we'll collect everything, and we'll have one person contact the Board of Elections with what the problems that we've seen this year, okay?
I emailed you today.
I know you did, but I'm asking, I do have yours, okay? And I do this meeting
great.
in case there are other people, so we can take care of it. But we do know that on the league website, we do have the poll sites. One other thing, some counties are allowing for people to go to vote early on any poll site. We have to remember that there are leagues upstate where there is only one early poll site. And like Kathy Stein said, in her area, there's one poll site and it could take an hour to get to. But in Westchester, you have assigned poll sites for early voting. In other places, you can vote in any early voting poll site. So I just wanted to bring that up, because some leagues might be wondering, why are they talking about having to go to one poll site? It's because in Westchester, we're assigned an early voting poll site.
I have a question, if I may.
Go, please, Patricia.
Yes, I put it in the chat. How was it decided on how many poll sites will be located in each district?
There was, Kate might still know the number. I knew it last year, but it was per a certain number, there had to be a poll site.
50.
So it went by numbers.
50,000.
That's what I thought.
And is that for this voting also, you know, because of the pandemic virus?
That law did not change.
They also, for the primary, they changed the regulations so that they could lower the number for a primary based on just voters registered in the party having the primary, which a lot of the groups disagreed with, and I think we disagreed with too, but ultimately it was the Board of Elections decision. So that's why in your county, if you had more for the general, you might have less now for the primary, which is unfortunate.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Okay, so we're going to move on to directions to the board, because we're past our 90 minutes, which is when I hope to close us down, but I don't want to skip this part at all. Nancy Marr from Brookhaven, do you want to read your direction to the board? Are you with us, Nancy?
I think she was on by phone. I didn't.
No, I didn't. I have to unmute. Okay.
Oh, there you go.
You can hear me. Okay. Each year, our members have a meeting where we talk about the positions either nationally or statewide. So we come up with better understanding of them and maybe some suggestions. So this was done this year because we do it before the national convention. So it may be confusing that it's national and not state, but the group recommends that they'd like to see an update of the national position on child care and early intervention for children at risk. We want to expand the expressed purpose of early child care and education and recognize that child care programs are a key supportive service for all families, not just poor families. We oppose the cutbacks in the SNAP program, and we recommend that we study the national legislation regarding universal feeding of children. So that's a suggestion.
Thank you, Nancy.
Okay.
Rensselaer, Judy Meyer. Are you still with us? Judy Meyer?
Judy, you need
Or
to
is-
unmute.
Unmute, maybe.
She's there, I see her,
I see her too.
but she's still muted.
Oh.
There you go, you're off, you're on, Judy.
She's still muted.
Speak louder though, Judy.
So,
There you go.
our statement is that we.
Yeah,
Okay.
stay close to your microphone, Judy.
Our league is continuing to be concerned.
You're breaking up, Judy. Yeah.
Is Shirley on still? Maybe Shirley has a better connection.
Continue to be concerned about the long-term financial sustainability of the New York State League, especially.
Yeah, Judy, you're breaking up.
If I take a picture off, is connection any better?
Judy, we really can't hear you. Shirley Buell. Shirley, do you want to unmute and can
Apparently
you
not.
read your statement instead? Maybe you have a better connection.
Okay, I don't actually have the statement.
Shirley has the written copy or not?
We can't hear you, Judy.
Judy, can you drop it into the chat? Whatever you have, just copy and paste it into the chat.
Actually, I might have it and I could screen share, I suppose. Why don't you move on, Suzanne, and we'll come back. to
Okay,
it
we'll move
later.
on. Schenectady, Ann Hecky. Are you still with us? I saw you earlier.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes. Okay, unmute and go for it.
I'm not sure what you're asking me, actually.
Oh, did you want to read your directions to the board?
Oh, no, thank you.
Okay, all right. Albany, Gail Volk.
Hi.
Hi, Gail.
Hiya. This is something that connects with last year's meeting that we had, so we kind of move forward with it. As we celebrate the centennial of our organization, passage of the 19th Amendment, and the courage, persistence, and vision of our founding members, so too should we acknowledge the path has been marred by explicit and implicit racism. According to Sharon Hurley's article, African American Women and the 19th Amendment, alliances of Black and white abolitionists and suffragists who worked together toward a common purpose before the Civil War broke down when the 15th Amendment enfranchised Black men but not women. According to Harley, suffragists had to choose between insisting on universal rights or accepting the priority of Black male suffrage. Therefore, in fighting to win women's enfranchisement, some white suffragists made politically expedient but morally wanting choices that betrayed African American suffragists by engaging in racist rhetoric and deeds, thereby betraying our allies as well as our own best selves. As the beneficiaries of the founders' legacy, And as a step toward reparations, we acknowledge and apologize for the betrayals of the past so that we can move forward toward our goal of an inclusive New York State League of Women Voters. Going forward in our next 100 years, it is essential for us to be thoughtful, transparent, consistent, and constant, and do better in the future. We need to expand our coalitions and create a more welcoming space to be able to fulfill our purpose. We should reach out and work with African American women to determine how collaboration can expand our civic engagement and engagement to all communities of New York. Pursuant to the League of Women Voters DEI policies stating diversity, equity, and inclusion are central to the organization's current and future success in engaging all individuals, households, communities, and policymakers in creating a more perfect democracy. We seek to direct the New York State League of Women Voters New York State Board to issue an apology and acknowledgement of this past as we continue to focus our work to create a diverse League of Women Voters New York State that serves the entire state. That's it.
Thank you, Gail. Barb Thomas, you had something you wanted to add to directions to the board? You need to unmute yourself, please. There you go.
I was just struck when we were talking about the criminal justice thing that really we need to have much more of an effort to recruit issues specialists on a great variety. We don't really have enough issues specialists for all the different positions that we have and that we would like to move forward in the legislature. And I think that that really needs to be an emphasis, that we need to get people and recruit members who have some sort of an interest to really step up and say, okay, yeah, I'll be the person who does criminal justice, or I'll be in charge of court reform or healthcare, or, well, we have healthcare. But I know though I am like the women's issues person and the medical aid and dying person, and I could sure use other people for parts of what we called women's issues, though they're, of course, people issues, human issues. But, you know, there's such a range of things. We don't have a domestic violence person. We don't have a child care person. So I think it's important that we really try to get people to follow those issues and to have some support from Jennifer to actually put us in touch with what's happening, but to really work on being more active.
Okay, thank you. And could you write that up and send it to us, please?
Oh, I guess so.
Well, we like to publish them all and publish a response. So that we know, you know that we've heard you. Okay, well, I think that is all.
Do you want to go back to Rensselaer, Suzanne?
Rensselaer,
Yeah.
Let's try it again.
Shirley, I'm going to share the screen with your thing if you'd like to read it.
She doesn't have it.
All right.
Okay.
Hang on. Here we go. There you go.
Aha.
Okay. We continue to be concerned about the long-term financial sustainability of the New York State League, especially related to Jennifer Wilson's assistant director position. We consider the role of this position essential to the full functioning of the League, as it includes advocacy, communication to members and the public, technical support, and more. We do not hear a plan to support the position or see money budgeted to develop the required funds. Scrambling annually with a variety of fundraising events does not seem adequate to give the organization a solid footing. We would also like to ask for more technological support. The current personal contact lockdown crisis further emphasizes our dependence on excuse me, online tools built for outreach and organizational management. The content templates and toolkits are very useful and appreciated, but often our difficulties seem to stem from aspects of application setup or issues transferring an application from one manager to another. We realize there are many varied skill levels among members. Whoops, I just lost my member leagues, and a great variety of internal platforms in use around the state.
Thank you, Shirley. I'm glad we were able to
Okay, you're welcome.
accommodate that. Okay, I don't have any more directions
Oh,
to
There
the
was
board.
another one.
There's one more in the chat.
There is one more.
Yep.
Where is it coming from?
No, there isn't.
No,
Patricia-
okay.
Patricia, Mary Bilby's that was sent is what Gail just read.
No, it's not.
Different. No, I'm sorry, it was different.
Oh, then I don't have that one.
Okay, shall I read it then?
Well, you need to also send it to us, but I
Oh,
guess.
I think she did send it,
Yeah,
but
it was sent today.
yep, but let me just go to it. I'm sorry I'm not screen sharing because bandwidth issues. I'd rather hear you and not break up, so I'm not putting my video on. Okay. In light of recent police killings and brutality disproportionately affecting Black and Brown communities, the League of Women Voters of New York State stands in solidarity with the millions of people who have shown up in the streets, armed with information to demand change and remedy toxic and systemic racism present in this country as a threat to our democracy. For centuries, discrimination and violent tactics have been used against Black Americans, contributing to oppression, pain, and suffering. Racism makes the world unequal and unsafe, and a just society must reflect prosperity for all people. As an organization dedicated to empowering voters and defending democracy, we are cognizant of the systemic racism that has long divided our nation and have long fought for public policies to eliminate racism. We are committed to partnering with communities of color on the issues that disproportionately affect Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities. We stand by those who are unveiling the illusion that this country is equal in all forms and recognize the urgency of this movement and are committed to continuing our pivotal work with frontline communities to demand positive change. We recognize that police brutality and the justice system is only one aspect of systemic racism, and that the country must address such as inequality in housing, education, healthcare, voting rights, and participation in government. The League of Women Voters of New York State should call on leaders to be held accountable and to ensure reform and justice that provides for the safety, dignity, and opportunity for all people everywhere. We are making a commitment to be part of the solution by continuing to empower voters and defend democracy and to advocate for public policies to achieve that goal.
Patricia, I actually have that one. I guess, Gail, I don't have the one you read. So if you could email me that one, that would be helpful. We just need to have it all in writing. So
All right, I did email that, so obviously I screwed that up. But
well, I'm sorry, maybe I got the two confused or something. I apologize, but just send it to me again. I definitely have the one I just checked that Patricia just read. So,
okay.
So
yeah.
Patricia,
Yes, ma'am.
that was the statement. Do you want to read your direction to the board?
That is it.
Yeah, I apologize because the way that Mary wrote it was a statement that she wanted the board to issue. So our question really should come into you as it should have come in as a statement to the board. There isn't really a question, but it's more calling for your action at the state level to basically take the actions that she outlined in the direction.
Yeah, I do have the directions to the board too, Suzanne, so.
Yeah, I have the direction to the board, and then I have the statement
Right.
that you read,
So we
which
have
is
both
the
of those.
attachment. Yeah,
Yep.
I have both of those. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Okay. All right. Well, we've gone 25 minutes over. I hope you all don't mind. I think it was fruitful to have a lot of these discussions and let you know where we're headed, some of us this year at the state board. So you can, and please just keep communicating with us. We're doing, the more we all talk together, the better job we do. So I want to thank you for all your responses, and the responses to the directions will be on the website as they are from 2019. Probably by the end of our September board meeting. We meet July by video and then again in September, and we will be responding to all of your directions. So if there are no other things to come before this meeting, I'll ask for an adjournment. Move to adjourn.
I'll move to
Thank you,
adjourn.
Leslie.
I'll second.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, everyone. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Stay well. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Lori.
Thank you. Yeah, she's left.
Bye.